It's been a dry couple of weeks for UFC fans since Alex Pereira last knocked out Yuri Prochazka at the main event of UFC 303 2 weeks ago. We've got a relatively decent fight night card coming up. It may not be the hottest main event there is, which got Rose Namajunas taking on Tracy Cortez. And again, it's par for what UFC cards are like. Sometimes you have a ho-hum main event and a very, very good main card and sort of some good fights in the prelims. And what I'm here to talk about today is 5 fights that you guys should keep in mind while watching the next UFC fight card. The first one I really want to get into is Gian Silva taking on Drew Dober. This is the co-main event. An excellent fight. Gian Silva last fought at UFC 303 where he stopped Charles Jourdain by TKO in the second round, hit him with a beautiful uppercut, breaking off a clinch. He's stepping up, taking a place of Mike Davis, taking on Drew Dober. Now, we all know Drew Dober is. Drew Dober is basically the Crimson Chin. The Crimson Chin! I don't know if you guys remember that cartoon, but if you do, the guy's got a jaw like built like no other. Very durable, very hard to take down, very hard to hurt. Hits very hard, has got very good hooks, and he's basically a game fighter. But as it is with guys in lightweight fighting guys from featherweight, if you notice this, guys coming up from lighter weight classes always have the speed advantage, right? They'll always have the speed advantage. And number two, they're a little bit more durable because they're not cutting weight. Gian Silva is taking this fight on what, 2 weeks notice, right? And it's going to be a tough out for him because Drew Dober is a challenge. But Drew Dober has been hurt before. And Gian Silva has got the power to hurt him. Gian Silva, I don't know if you guys know, comes from Fight Nerds Academy, which hosts guys like Caio Borrario, Carlo Praches, very good prospects, undefeated, excellent prospects. So Gian Silva is another one of those Brazilian dudes who comes from that lineage. If I had to pick, I would say Gian Silva by TKO, maybe in the second round. I'm quite confident in picking the smaller fighter. All right, the next fight I really want to talk about and I'm quite interested in is the return of Gabriel Bonfim taking on Angel Lusa. If you guys don't know, Gabriel Bonfim, middleweight prospect out of Brazil, brother of Ishmael Bonfim, another prospect who recently has had a tough run in the UFC, lost to BSD. But Gabriel Bonfim, again, excellent striker, very good on the ground, excellent submissions. His first 3 wins in the UFC were all in the first round, all by submission. I remember he fought Munir Laziz, body kicked him, put him in the guillotine, choked him out. Fought Trevin Giles at middleweight, put him out with the guillotine as well. So his only setback in his 16 fight career has been to Nicholas Dalby. Nicholas Dalby is an excellent Danish fighter, basically just put it on him and broke him in the second round. The second or third round, I can't remember, but it was in the later rounds. He broke Gabriel Bonfim, and this is his return fight. He's taking on Angel Lusa, a Swiss fighter, whose 2 losses in the UFC have been against very good fighters. He first took on Jack Della Maddalena at the UFC Contender Series, had a tough fight against him. And then in his debut in the UFC, got TUF winner Brian Battle. And that fight was, I think, called off because of an accidental eye poke. But even then, before that, he was getting kind of tuned up by Brian Battle, right? So a tough fight for Angel Lusa. But it's a good fight for him in a way because it's a return of someone who's been undefeated and got defeated once, right? Like, what's his mentality? Like, what's Gabriel thinking? How is he going to deal with someone like Angel Lusa? Technically, very sound fighter. Very interesting fight. Another one of these hidden gems when it comes to the UFC, right? Like, it's only this promotion can put on a fight between prospects like this. Up next, we've got a real clash between featherweight contenders. We've got, well, not contender, I wouldn't call Julian Erosa a contender, but Julian Erosa versus Christian Rodriguez. Christian Rodriguez was the first guy who handed his lost Rahul Rosas Jr. at bantamweight. The only problem with Christian Rodriguez is he has trouble making bantamweight. Relatively big bantamweight, so he has trouble making the weight. So the UFC have kind of forced him to move up, and here he is taking on Julian Erosa, who is, I would say, a well-traveled journeyman. Guy's got a record of like what, 27-12, something like that, like a crazy record, and has fought, won, lost, lost by submission, lost by KO, has beaten guys by submission, beaten guys by KO. He submitted Charles Jourdain, beat Nate Landwehr, Nate the Train Landwehr, kneed him in the face and basically stopped him. So it's a good fight for Christian Rodriguez. It's just that I don't see how he's going to, like, maybe he grapples Julian Erosa, takes him down. Christian Rodriguez is a smaller featherweight. He's a guy that could fight at bantamweight but can't make the weight. Julian Erosa cannot fight at bantamweight. I think Julian Erosa cut down from lightweight at some point as well. So it's going to be a very tough fight for Christian Rodriguez. But again, a very good fight to test out all these new prospects in the UFC, right? You put them up against guys who are journeymen, who are good veterans, guys who understand taking a shot, who know how to deal with pressure. And like you see how prospects deal with going into the second or the third round. It's a really smart matchmaking move from the UFC. Got to give them that much. And the only thing I worry about is that maybe a guy like Christian Rodriguez not able to take a guy like Julian Erosa down, maybe have trouble with that. So good fight. I see. I mean, as a prediction, I would say this is a tough one to call. Christian Rodriguez by decision, maybe. I mean, that could be a viable option there. Finally, one of the better fights I want to talk about in the prelims is another prospect, Joshua Van, Filipino-American, taking on Charles Jordan. Charles Jordan is a very unorthodox fighter. Guy has never been stopped in his MMA career, fought the who's who of bantamweight. I think he's moving down to flyweight now. The guy is he's got a very difficult style to deal with. Joshua Van, prospect, again, very good striking, very good ground game. Has been in the UFC for quite a while now. He's got a more basic game to him, but it's kind of like refined into what is useful for the UFC, right? Like a good cross, good body shots, good hooks, good takedown defense. Charles Jordan, on the other hand, is unorthodox. Fights like, a stance switcher. Fights from orthodox, moves to southpaw, will throw elbows, knees, will jump in for flying knees, will try all sorts of stuff, and is a very good wrestler as well. Again, this is a very good test for Joshua Van. I like these kind of fights because it shows you where prospects actually are, right? Like in many ways, I hate to bring it up, but in many ways, this is what Anshul had when he fought Mike Breeden. A guy who's tenured, has had a lot of fights, and a prospect meeting a veteran. This is what the UFC does the best, and these are these kinds of fights that kind of pique my interest. I don't know if you guys are interested in like rising prospects, but this is where it's really at. This first time I saw Peyton Talbot fighting as well was on the prelims of some random card in the middle of nowhere. I think it was an Apex card. So pay attention to this. I think Joshua Van could get this done. I think if he uses his wrestling, uses his grappling, maybe strikes into wrestling, takes Charles Jordan down, keeps him there, he could win a decision. I think Charles Jordan also fought Muhammad Mukayev. Mukayev couldn't beat him, couldn't sub him, but did beat him by decision, if I'm not mistaken. But he's been beaten by decision, so I don't think there's going to be a finish. Pick Joshua Van by decision. The last fight I want to talk about, it's not as interesting as the others, but Cody Brundage making a return after his loss to Bo Nickel. He put up a good account of himself. Shucked off a lot of Bo Nickel's takedowns, but in the end, the grappling was just too much for him to handle and got choked out. He's a solid middleweight, taking on Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who in his own right is a solid middleweight. Had a tough run in the UFC recently, but looking to make a comeback. So another very interesting fight of like mid-level UFC guys. These are the guys that basically keep the UFC running. You can't have stars all the time. You got to have guys filling out all these cards. You've got 12 fights in a card. Who's going to fill out the rest of the 12, if all your fights are just main event guys, right? So it's important to watch these guys' careers grow as well. Cody Brundage versus Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Excellent fight to keep an eye out for. I think Cody Brundage, if he doesn't self-implode and have a brain fart moment, should just out-wrestle Razak Al Hassan. So I picked Cody Brundage by decision. And these are the fights that I'm interested in this UFC card. We've all been starved for 2 weeks, right? We're all living off the high of Alex Pereira knocking out Jiří Procházka. But the decent fight card, we're all waiting for UFC 304, which is taking place in Manchester on the 28th of July, which is, I think, a couple of weeks away. Pay attention for that. We'll have a couple of maybe prediction videos on that. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and remember, live MMA now. See you guys.